Thanks, Christine. I appreciate that. That's a lovely introduction. I'm going to try really hard not to cry through this, but it can be hard for me. Um, in sitting down and putting my thoughts together, reading my Karen folder that I've kept all these years of every correspondence and notes and everything. Um, I just came up with some thoughts that kind of read like a story. So I'm gonna go ahead and just read what I've got here and go from there. So the addict in my life is my son Max. Max started drinking at a really young age, really young. And my husband and I did a lot of traveling and entertaining, and there was always a lot of drinking. In junior high and high school, Max graduated into doing marijuana and mushrooms and eventually harder drugs like cocaine and heroin. When Max was 21, his dad and I divorced, and I moved from Los Angeles to San Diego. Before Max's recovery, I was an expert in fear, denial, and avoidance. It was a way of life for me, and it was easy. Max and I had a shaky relationship for so many years, and I ignored any nagging suspicions or obvious signs of trouble in Max's life. I was also a classic enabler, which allowed me to feel like I was being a supportive mom, even when I knew deep down that something was wrong. With Max living in LA and me living in San Diego, that distance also contributed to my ability to live in denial and avoid the situation. Then Max moved to New York, which made it even easier for me. For Max's addiction became even more intense and he was spiraling out of control. And for me, it was out of sight, out of mind. When Max entered Karen in Pennsylvania in 2014, I had to face the reality of his addiction. I had to face the fact that my son was in very real danger of losing his life. I came to Karen for the family education program, and that's when I had to come face to face with the disease of addiction and face to face with my part in that disease. By acknowledging my years of fear, denial, and avoidance, I could begin to learn how to navigate through those feelings. And just like Max was learning at Karen, I learned that acknowledging my problems and my dysfunction was the first step in learning how to recover. During the family education program, Max and I worked together and took the first steps to understanding the unhealthy dynamics of our relationship. And that was the first steps in healing and moving forward in a productive direction. I left Karen armed with a lot of information, some hope, and a desire to grow through this and to connect with Max on a deeper level. I could now cross denial and avoidance off my list. When I returned to San Diego, fear's another thing altogether. When I returned to San Diego, I started attending a weekly Nar-Anon family group. And through those meetings, learning how other families were coping with their loved ones' addictions and taking care of themselves, I slowly began to figure out how to move forward. When Max left Karen, he attended sober living. And not long after he got there, I learned that he'd lost his cell phone. I was immediately overcome with fear and panic, and I was beside myself. After telling the Nar-Anon group the story, one of the parents in the group said, "Kathy, you've relapsed." At first, I was speechless, and I couldn't understand the concept that I had relapsed. Then I was able to understand that, like Max, I was also in recovery. I realized that I was responsible for my recovery. And just like Max, I was learning that recovery is one day at a time, and to let go and have faith in Max to solve his problems on his own. For me, being a part of that support group was key, especially in those early days. I try not to take Max's sobriety for granted. When he's having a tough day, or I can tell he's stressed about something, the familiar feeling of fear creeps into my mind. And when that happens, all I can really do is breathe and have faith. As for guilt, that's a tough one for me. Sometimes I still find myself going down that road. I should have paid more attention. How could I have let this happen to Max? Why didn't I do something when he was younger? My son was in pain and I did nothing to help him. But guilt serves no purpose. And when I find myself there, all I can really do is feel it and let it go. The recovery community is truly amazing. There's so much support from each other and for each other. And none of us are in this alone. We learn from each other's experience, and it's a lifelong process. Recovery's one day at a time. Max's story could have ended in tragedy, but he had the courage to take those first steps at Karen. He has the courage to take those steps every day, and he's built an amazing life for himself, and he does the work. I'm so proud to say that Max recently celebrated 10 years of sobriety, and I'm so grateful. And I hope that Max's story gives families hope that recovery is possible. In my experience, there are always gifts that come out of the difficulties in life. Max's sobriety is the first gift. I moved to Connecticut last year, and I get to be a real part of Max's life with his wife and my two beautiful granddaughters, and that's such a dream come true. And all that being said, what have I learned, and what would I want to share with someone going down this road? Avoidance can be dangerous. You have to find the courage to face those nagging little signs and ask your loved one if they need help, and let them know you're there for them if and when they do. It's okay to ask the hard questions. As the saying goes, knowledge is power. Thanks, Christine, for inviting me to share my story, Max's story. It's ongoing. Max has to oh, hang on one second. Max has to work on his sobriety every day. He has to sustain that for the rest of his life. And that can be a heavy thought for me. But I have faith in him, and I'm so grateful for the recovery community. It's amazing how everybody supports each other. This is a quick little story. I went to New York City for Max's 1-year anniversary to see him get his 1-year coin. And it was it was in a big church, and there were a lot of people. And the person leading the meeting ceremony wanted everybody in the audience who had, if they wanted to, have in recovery, to stand up and tell everybody how long you've been in recovery. And there were people that stood up and said 5 years, 1 year, 6 months, and everybody clapped, and it was so wonderful. And there was one girl that stood up. I think she said, I have one week of sobriety. And the applause for her were just amazing. And it was just so touching. And I just feel that the community and the just sharing and knowing that other people are going through the same thing. Everybody has their own story. And it's, the cliche, one day at a time, is all it is. It's one day at a time. And Max, you're listening. I'm so grateful for everything. My other son is listening. I didn't know that. Michael, I'm grateful for everything you did to help Max and to help me. And I'm just very, very grateful. And I just love the community of it. And I really appreciate being asked to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. It was so good to hear from you tonight, and I'm going to open it up to comments and questions, and please feel free to put up your hand. I'm going to actually stop the recording, which is what I said I would do.